She appealed that case to the United States Supreme Court. There was a concurring opinion in that, which is quite famous now. I want you to read, put it part of the text on the board, just so you can sort of read with me, if you like, what Justice Miller said. He says, the civil law, as well as nature herself, has always recognized a wide difference in the respective spheres and destinies of man and woman. The natural and proper timidity and delicacy which belongs to the female sex evidently unfits it for many of the occupations of civil life. The harmony which should belong to the family institution is repugnant to the idea of a woman adopting a distinct and independent career from that of her husband. Ignoring the fact that Myra Bradwell's husband was a lawyer, and the career would not have been necessarily distinct from him, but this attitude is the attitude that Dr. Al-Hibri was discussing. And my point is, this is a universal attitude. It's not an Islamic attitude, it's not a Christian attitude, it's an attitude probably of men, is it not? Had Justice Miller been as knowledgeable in interpreting our Constitution as our founding fathers were in writing it, he would have known that the Prophet's first wife was a very successful businesswoman, right? So not only ancient Middle Eastern history, but the history of the United States that has evolved since that time, seen perhaps in our own family, and proved that he was wrong, and that this statement is wrong, and it's incorrect. Today, approximately 50% of all of the new lawyers in the United States are women. And what we know is that they are at least as good a lawyers as the men. And as someone who teaches them, I can say they tend to be better students, do they not? I'd like to talk to you about what modern research says about the capabilities of men and women in business in the United States, in medicine and in law. And it's not to talk about the United States, it's to talk about women and occupations generally. First, business. In the 1980s, the Center for Creative Leadership, whose David Campbell will be with us next week, and Mays has already mentioned, studied high-level male and female executives and published its findings in a book entitled Breaking the Glass Ceiling. Now, the problem was there weren't a lot of high-level women to study compared to the number of men, because business had been excluded at the upper levels as a level of achievement. And that's one of the reasons that I think women came to law, because our attitude is what? Justice. That's our value. Women could confront the law schools with their own values, right? But this is what you think, then should I be admitted if I'm as qualified as a male applicant? Yes. But an interesting finding when we looked at books was that all of the male and female stereotypes about women in business were untrue. When compared with men, women were not, for instance, less dominant in leadership positions. They were not less self-confident. They were not less secure. They were not less able to cope with stress, which they would have been were these stereotypes true. On the other hand, they were not any better able to reduce interpersonal friction. They were not more understanding, and they were not more impulsive than men. Though the stereotypes of women at the time would say that those things would probably be true. There was one key difference between men and women. Women executives at this level were more likely to move in new and original directions. Is that because of the nature of women, or might it be that if you have 100 men and 2 women, what do women have to do to be assured of getting promotions? They have to move in new and original directions. It helps the men in the male-dominated society would be the ones who advanced. Now, At the time of this study, the women reported that their behavior, this was 30 years ago, was restricted. If these two circles represent male behaviors and female behaviors generally, what the women reported was that while the men had the full range of behaviors that were in that circle, even the most outrageous, women to succeed at that time were restricted to areas of overlap. To succeed, they had to behave in ways that would have been appropriate if a man were doing it and a woman would do it. So, for instance, at that time, women wore, you remember this, Dr. Kelly, it may have been time you were personal, wore suits, did they not? And they wore big ties, big bow ties. They did not wear dresses because men wouldn't wear dresses, right? Okay. I think that's changed somewhat. And I think that today what we see is that male behaviors are being restricted, particularly the most outrageous, such as the indiscriminate profanity some men use. They cannot do that today. And women are being wear dresses. Okay? But what we see is that the line for women has not moved as far. We still don't have balance. But what we see again is the kind of gradual change that Dr. Leary is talking about, and that change is accelerating. I'm going to tell you now about a study in medicine in Rush Presbyterian Hospital. A study was done to determine whether attributes that were stereotypically related to gender made physicians happier and more successful in the practice of medicine. And I think that some of the people who did the study had the premise that physicians who had what they called male attributes, such as assertiveness, would be happier and more successful than physicians who had female, stereotypically female attributes like empathy. Well, when the research came down, they found there were not just two ways of being a doctor. You couldn't just be high masculine or high feminine. You could be high masculine, low feminine, high feminine, low masculine. You could be low masculine and low feminine, or you could be high masculine and high feminine. Again, thinking of these stereotypes as gender related. And who do you think were the happiest and most successful? Yes, the people who were high masculine and high feminine. Think about it. If you are a physician who is empathetic, you talk to your patient before you operate on them, right? And in the surgery, they're not worrying as much. And the surgery goes better. When you talk with them after they get out of the surgery, they feel better and they heal better. Now, if also when you go into the surgery, you can cut them, assertiveness, you do better. If you are a great cutter, but you do not talk to your patients before or after they work, and the surgery, they do not heal as well. They do not do as well, you do not feel as better, you do not feel as successful, you do not stand. On the other hand, even though you're very empathetic and good, if you go into the operating room and you're timid, you cannot control the situation, you find it difficult to cut. You're not going to have the technical competence to do what you should do in that room. So, what the researchers found was that these male and female attributes are not male and female, not gender-related attributes at all. They are professional attributes. And the more of each of these that professionals possess, the better and happier and more successful they will be.